Hello, everyone. Good night, good night, good night. And how are you tonight? We are experiencing a beautiful rainstorm here in Toronto, and it is a beautiful Monday, though. It's cooled down the temperatures, and it's all good. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the time now for you to get comfy. Hope you got a good snack, and a notepad. We're going to show some wisdom keys tonight as we have the show. And my guests tonight, I am so honored to have them. So, welcome to the Victory Speaks Inspired Conversation series. I am your host, Nicole Waldron, your voice of victory and your mental fitness coach. And I'm on a mission to inspire you to live a life of victory, a victorious lifestyle. And as we get into the show, we got to have a little jazz, a little Caribbean flavor. And you're listening to the sounds of Calabash, and they are a Canadian jazz group led by Anthony Pierre with the focal point of the steel pan. Now, you need to get the album if you don't have the album because it is amazing. This song is called From Whence We Came. And so, just as we're about to get into the conversations, I have many conversations all the time. Some are good, some are bad, some are funny, but they're always inspiring. You know why? Because it's about perspective. And tonight, the focus of this conversation is going to be pretty serious. It's pretty deep. We're talking gun violence, roots, causes, and solutions. And so I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about my guests. And if you are on social media, I have dropped their full bios there for you. Louis March has been a volunteer and community worker and advocate in the Black community for over 40 years. And he has worked primarily focused on youth issues such as unemployment, education, gang engagement, family and cultural awareness, and also survival in the justice system. He has a public administration and governance degree from Ryerson University and has completed the certified program on the Canadian criminal justice system. He is the founder of the Zero Gun Violence Movement, a collaboration of over 40 different community organizations, agencies, and programs across the city. They're committed to addressing intense structural and social economic conditions that contribute to gun violence. You know, the Zero Gun Violence Movement is an awareness and advocacy movement that works across the city to engage people and organizations that are truly committed to being a part of the solution. And joining him is Coach Stone, Coach Danny Stone. Some of you may have seen him on the Victory Speak show. He is one of my co hosts, he's my cohort. He is a life coach, he's an author, he's a teacher, he's a speaker, he's a community servant and entrepreneur. He's an advisor and community servant with the Zero Gun Violence Movement as well. And Danny has coached hundreds of people, helping them level up their careers in business and lives. And he has dedicated his life to helping people break through barriers and achieve their biggest goals. Now, you got to tune into his podcast and the Grind and Gratitude Show, and it gives people practical tips to implementing change and step into their greatness. It has reached listeners across 22 countries. Now, listen, sit back, get ready. I want you to be engaged. I need you to be engaged because the Zero Gun Violence Movement is committed to ending gun violence in Toronto and beyond. And we want to have a significant conversation about that. We want your feedback, we want your ideas, we want to hear from you. So let's give them victory speaks love. Welcome your emojis. Danny and Louie, welcome to the Victory Speak Show. Woo woo!
You already know
Thanks for
Coach
having us.
Soda's in the building. What's going on, everybody?
Thank you very
Stone
much
is
for
in
having
the
me.
building, y'all. Love it. Hey, Louie, how you doing tonight?
Still standing, still fighting. No pause button in this work.
Hey, no pause button in this book. What about you, Mr. Coach Stone?
I'm doing well. Just always happy to be on stage or any platform. My brother Louie out here doing this really important work. So we're gonna talk about some serious issues, but we also like to laugh because you have to laugh sometimes.
Well, laughter is the best medicine, right? It's actually, you know, the chemicals that come out of our body with laughter is so necessary to our healing, and many people miss that. So, welcome everybody live on the replay. I'm seeing Grace, I'm seeing Destiny, I'm seeing Joan, I'm seeing Love More. And if you're on YouTube, drop a comment in the chat. Tell us where you're from. We want to hear from you. And so, first off, let's start on a up note. I want to say congratulations, Louis March and Coach Stone was with you today. You guys have received a 2021 Mayor's Community Safety Award. Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah,
I
yeah.
am so excited. Congratulations. How
Thank
did
you,
that
thank
feel,
you.
Louis?
You know what? It wasn't expected because we have not really worked hand in hand with the city. We've had some disagreements in terms of strategies, and we've been one of the vocal critiques of what's going on at City Hall when it comes to gun violence.
Right.
So for them to give us an award for our commitment to community safety was a pleasant surprise, but it gave me an opportunity to talk about the many organizations and the incredible people and highlight them, in terms of their incredible work that they're doing without getting paid one red cent,
Mm,
but always being there in a very constructive, positive, and active way. Not like how we see the city government working, like I trust these people more than I trust the government and the politicians, the people that we work with the zero gun violence movement.
no, I hear you. But it's interesting. You never know who's watching when you're doing the work. And this is why you got to do the work, because even your critics have to realize that you're still doing good work. We can disagree, but when you're
Hmm.
doing the work, come on now, they got to recognize. So that means that somebody somewhere recognizes the value of what you have been doing.
Yeah, and they have a special committee set up with community people, with young people, with the political people, and they're the ones that decided on who was going to get the awards. And so yeah, there's people out there that are in the know. Put it that way.
Love it, love it. So, Danny, wait a second. How in the world? I mean, you're from Halifax, Nova Scotia. I know you're like, I know you call yourself a Torontonian now, somewhat. How did you even meet Louis?
Well, before I even get there, I got to say, Louis gave an amazing speech today at the award ceremony. And one thing I love about Louis is he always acknowledges, other people who are doing amazing work in the community, leaders, even politicians that are doing amazing work. So, while his speech was going on, everybody in the chat was going crazy because that's how Louis is, right? He's always somebody who brings attention to everybody who's doing the amazing work. So, how I met Louis was Louis and I used to work together at a financial institution many years ago, probably 10 years ago now. And Louis was a manager in the organization, and I had just started in the organization. And everybody was talking about this Louis guy. Everybody always had great things to say about him. They were just singing his praises. I was like, I got to meet this guy. Go down, meet Louis. We hit it off. We had a really great relationship at our former place of employment, and then we both ended up leaving. And I come to find out that Louis was doing this community work. And coming from Nova Scotia, I had always been doing community work. But the problem I found here in the city was that I'm trying to put this in a nice way, but I had tried to
Tell
do
the
some
truth.
work. I tried to do some work with some community organizations, and I just found out they were very unprofessional, very
Mm.
disorganized. There was a lot of infighting. So when I found out Louis had started zero gun violence movement, I reached out to him. I said, "Man, what's going on with the zero gun violence movement?" And he broke it down to me. Look, we're out here. He'll tell you it started as a project and then just kind of took off. And then once I met Louis and he introduced me to some of the other people who were involved, I thought, man, this is where I really want to spend my time and my energy. I want to be out here with these people who really care about creating safe communities, who care about ending gun violence, who care about inspiring young people and bringing hope back. And so I think Zero Gun Violence Movement has been around for 8 years, and I think I've been with them for about 7.
Wow, that's amazing. So Louis, tell us about, moving from the corporate world and doing this. Like, what really struck you? Why did you even start this organization?
That's a big question. I've been working in the community, as you know, for 40 years. Uh, In the 1970s, worked with a youth group called Black Youth Community Action Project, and that was the youth wing for the Universal, the UNIA chapter, Marcus Garvey's organization. We were the youth group as part of that. We had a conference, Black youth conference at Court Community Center at Bathurst and Dundas in 1979. And the issues that we were dealing with were police brutality, the school to prison pipeline, and anti-Black racism, and how it affected Black youth. So that's when the work actually started. Dudley Laws was my mentor, and we used to do a lot of work together on community initiatives. So that continued, even though my career job was in financial services as a corporate manager. So while I was doing that, I still worked with a lot of these organizations and people we're working with. In 2000, and I think it was 12, we had a shooting at the Eden Center. We had the shooting at the Danzig community event. And I was laid off by the financial institution. The majority of my department was outsourced to India. So they gave me a generous severance package. And it was time for me to reevaluate. What do I really want to do now? So I'm saying, hold on a second. We've been speaking about police brutality for how many years? Now these shootings were turning the guns on each other. What has changed? So I called a community meeting with some of the community organizations I've been working with. And I says, the F is going on here, right? And what was going on in the city was unacceptable. The shooting in our communities by our own people. So I said, look, we need to do something about it. And this is when I proposed the whole concept of zero gun violence. We don't want any gun violence in our community. What would it take? And people started laughing and joking, saying that's impossible. So I put something on the table and I said, look, we already have zero gun violence in the city. So don't tell me it's impossible. But we only have it in certain neighborhoods for certain people with certain postal codes. So if they can have zero gun violence in Rosedale, why can't we have zero gun violence in Rexdale? And why are we accepting the status quo? So then people started to buy into it and saying, hold on a second, that's big. So what is going on in Rosedale that is not going on in Rexdale? And what is going on in Rexdale that is not going on in Rosedale? And why are we signing on to it and accepting it as a status quo? So we decided to launch Zero Gun Violence Movement. There were 7 organizations on the day we launched. It was June the 21st, 2013, with 7 community organizations. And we launched out of a community initiative at Kennedy and Midland called Redemption Reintegration Services. That was a group that was helping young people when they left jail. And we started off, seriously, Nicole, we started off as a 90-day summer campaign. We're going to do this work for the summer because summer is when it really gets hot. And hold on a second. As we started to do this work, we realized that this problem is bigger than we thought.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a policing issue. This is not a policing solution. There's something else going on. So come day 91, we said, look, we need to continue this. And we continued it. And Danny mentioned it, 8 years later, we're still going strong. Right now, we have over 40 different community organizations that we work with. And if you look at the number, it's really over 50 now, but I have not been able to document it as fact yet. But we work with community organizations that believe in this bold and ambitious objective of zero gun violence, not only for some people, but for everybody, right? And it's difficult to believe that when you see what's going on around you. But I can understand that. But instead of accepting it, zero gun violence movement now is about making the change, forcing the change by any means necessary.
Like,
Right?
what made you even think that you could make a difference? Like, you're coming out of corporate Canada. Like, like, what in the world made you, think, okay, I can make a difference in all of this?
Yeah, don't tell anybody this, right? But I used to go to work in a jacket and tie and a briefcase. Don't tell, look, if you ever tell anybody, Nicole, you watch me and you, right? I used to go to work on the subway. I had to leave my house by 7:30 and get on TTC with my jacket and tie and my suitcase and go to work into an office. So what changed? If you tell that to anybody right now, they're not going to believe you. So you can say whatever you want. No one's going to believe you. But anyway, I'm fortunate in that I've got some people working with me that are incredible, that share the same vision and want to make a difference. I also work with the community. So as I started studying more about our history, our traditions, right, where we're from as a people, and where we are right now, I could not accept that. So my work and my effort is about changing the narrative about gun violence, working with these incredible people,
Right.
because I bring a certain skill set to the table. Danny brings a certain skill set to the table. All the people that work with us, they all bring something different to the table. But when we sit down, Nicole,
Mm-hmm.
right, we have respect for each other's contribution and what they're doing, and
Yes.
that helps us come up with a different strategy than others that only focus on the people that think the same way they think, right? So what makes me think we can make a difference? I have confidence in the people I work with. And not only that, just the other day, somebody came to me and said, I remember you. I remember you. You came and you spoke to our group 6 years ago when we had just left the jail system and we were struggling.
Mm-hmm.
And we had an initiative that we're doing, and you were one of the speakers. And I remember what you said. And now he wants to work back with us, right? Like, you're walking down the street and people are coming up and saying, you had an impact. We remember what you were doing and what you were saying. So that is what inspires me to continue this work, knowing that if we're not doing this, Nicole, I don't know what state the city of Toronto would be like.
So you're literally walking in your purpose. This is a new level of purpose, and I like, because Danny and I, when we were on Clubhouse, our other gig, we've been talking about purpose a lot. And when you're purpose is, for me, I believe purpose is what you do on your way to destiny, because you were doing one thing one time and then it's something else now. You're not always locked into one thing, and so I commend you, so recognizing that there was a problem that made you upset and you wanted to do
Yes,
about it.
you don't know how angry I am because I know our history as a
But you
people.
have to be angry, because the kind of courage it takes. I mean, you didn't just take on, like, you didn't take on any, I'm not Jamaican, but any point point kind of thing,
Yeah, okay, I
You
know what you're
took on
saying.
you took on
Yes,
something that is scary. Like, when we start talking guns and we start talking, it's a very scary thing. Like, I remember Danzig. I remember when that happened. I remember
to the
walking
center.
through the center, and
Hmm.
having the meetings, and when we had that big meeting out by with the TTC and all the, we had senators, and we had, it was hard listening to the community of what they were actually being affected by. And that being said, I am also curious now, like, Stone, I know you don't come wrong always with this hat. This hat wasn't always your styling. Like, the fact that, okay, I know you love to give back and stuff like that, and you coming from a background of finance as well, doing that stuff, human resources, like, why would you even get involved with an organization with this kind of robust, hardcore mission? This is a hardcore mission.
Because I mean, I mentioned Louis the other day in Clubhouse for the same reason that we're talking about here. And I'll get to your question in a minute, but we have to understand this. We got to take this quick sidebar, because what Louis did was he saw a problem in our city.
Hmm.
Gun violence is a problem. And what everybody was saying at that time is, who's going to step up and take care of this problem? The city needs to do this. The police need to do this. Our education system needs to do this. And everybody's saying, what are they going to do? Or what are we going to do? But we is really you, right? Louis didn't wait. Louis said, what can I do? And that's what I want people to understand. One person has the ability to spark a movement, to get other people engaged. And so when you're sitting back and you see a problem in your community and you're saying somebody should take care of that, somebody should really speak to the youth, somebody should really go over there and say, you are the somebody. And so that's what I love about this initiative with Louis, is Louis was the someone. He was the we. And he started this movement, and he told you it was only supposed to be, you know, a 90-day project or a 90-day kind of thing. And it ended up being an 8-year project, and that we're still continuing to work on. So for me, you know, I grew up in an environment around a lot of drugs and guns. And I've lost friends to gun violence. And so I'm passionate about it because I see that there's not a lot of hope in some of our communities. Right. And I see that there's not a lot of role models that people can look up to. Right. It's like you have a devil on this shoulder and a devil on the other shoulder. Right. The people that you go to for advice are always going to give you bad advice. Yeah, go over there and handle that guy, or shoot this guy, or sell these drugs. And so the reason that I do this work is because we need to put hope back into our communities.
Yes.
We need people to understand that you're loved, that you're not some narrative that society says that you are, that just because you're from a specific neighborhood doesn't mean that you should be labeled a criminal. And I think, you know, that's part of the thing that's lacking. When we go out there and we speak to these young people and we look them in the eye and we tell them that the amazing things that we see in them, and we say, look, I love you. I care about you. Want to see you do well. Most of these men have never, or these young boys have never heard that. They've never heard that. So they don't know how to react. They're like, I remember Louis and I went to speak one time, and Louis said something to one of these young boys, like, I care about you and I want to see you do well. And the young boy said, why do you care about me? I'm nobody.
Right. Ooh.
And then Louis went in to tell him, you know, of course you're somebody. But that's what's lacking from our community. Because think about it. If you can go out there and shoot somebody else, obviously you don't love yourself.
Yeah.
Right? You see no value in someone else's life, then you see no value in your own.
It's like they speak death to themselves, and therefore they can speak death to each other. And there's nobody speaking life into them. And what you guys, I'm hearing you doing, you're speaking life into them because you understand, especially, you know, what it's not to have that person be able to talk to you and say, I love you. That's big, you know. And I think people don't realize the impact that has made. And what are the changes that you two have seen over the time that, you know, Dan, you've been involved 7 years, Louis, you've been doing this for, 8 years or so, and counting. What are the changes that you've seen with the programs that you've been doing, the talks you've been doing, the community outreach? And two of you go for the gold. I'm just gonna sit back and enjoy this ride.
So I'm going to talk about love, right? You know,
Hmm.
I speak at various institutions, uh, events, government, various levels, trying to bring a different narrative about gun violence to them, so at least they're more informed when they make decisions
Hmm.
and policy and funding decisions. And I was speaking at a university to some students, and I spoke for an hour. And with me that day was a mother who had lost her 2 sons to gun violence. Because when we go to speak, it's not just Louis alone. Like, we go as a crew, right? You know. So this mother who had lost her 2 sons to gun violence was there with me that day, because her narrative brings a different texture to the table. So after I finished speaking for 1 hour, Nicole, she comes up to me and she says, Louis, you spoke for a whole hour about gun violence, and you did not mention the word love once. I said, well, I'm not here to talk about love. I'm here to talk about gun violence. So she says, Louis, I lost my two sons to gun violence. And if I can speak about love, you can speak about love too, because that's what's missing. So even though she lost her two sons to gun violence, she still cared. And she understood the importance of love. She said, these young people are not experiencing any love. Nobody's talking to them about it.
Yes.
So whenever I speak now, I make sure, because in case she's listening or she's there, I got to insert the word love at least once. Right? But they don't have hope. A young person who's 15 years old says to me, I fear living more than I fear dying. I said, what?
Wow.
Pardon me? You say, I fear living more than I says, look, you don't know nothing about living. You're still in diapers. How can you be giving up on life already? He said, well, you don't know what I go through on a daily basis to survive. A 15-year-old says that to me. And how do I talk to him to buy some time until he figures things out? A 20-year-old works with us. His birthday, and I went and go said, happy birthday, you know? You know what his response was? I didn't think I was going to make it to 20. So if we know and we see what's going on and we continue to sit on the sidelines, waiting for politicians and police to fix this, then we become part of the problem. So that's why we do this work,
They're
because these kids deserve better.
seeing their life as not even a life. They see that they're just surviving until they die, is
Yes,
what I'm hearing you saying.
and death to them is not far. When I was growing up in Spanish Town in Jamaica, I feared hell. I feared dying. Right, you know? I did everything to make sure my life was long, even though I was not the best student. But anyway, I have valued living a long life. These kids up here, some of them, death, like I shouldn't say this, but
That is a relief.
they're not afraid
Say
of it.
it.
They're not afraid of it. And that's why they will put on a gun and they will go into a birthday party, right? Or they go into a playground where there's 11 children and pull a gun and try and shoot a guy that's there. They don't mind. They think this is a video game, right? But death is death, no matter how you look at it. And if they don't value their life, how are they going to value someone else's? And our young people, a lot of them are at that state right now. And we're going to sit down on the sidelines and leave it for politicians and police to fix it. We have to do this work. We don't have no choice.
You can see in the chat so many people talking about they lost people to gun violence, you know.
Right?
You know, I think
it's crazy out there. We work with mothers who have lost children to gun violence. Sorry, Danny. And I'm saying to myself, how do you wake up every morning knowing that you've lost your only son to gun violence or your two sons? What keeps you alive?
Yeah.
Right? And when they say that because they want to make a difference to prevent others from going through this, who am I to say no? Who am I to say no?
But Louis, I think that's one of the things that we have to talk about that came as a result of our of us working together. The mothers came together because we were a part of an event in Regent Park, and it was a bunch of community people that were there. And that day, I don't know what happened. There was more vendors than people that came out from the community.
Right.
So we were there, and there was a bunch of booths, and there was it was a really great turnout from the community organizations to try to bring some energy and awareness back to Regent Park. So we were there. This was a few years ago, and these two women walk in, and they said, you know, we expected more people to be here, and they saw us, Zero Gun Violence Movement, and so one of them came up to me and they said, well, what do you guys do? And I told them about what we do. And they said, you know, like, how can we get involved? Because we both lost our children to gun violence. Both of them had lost sons to gun violence. So they connected with us and Louis, and then the next thing we know, they started their own organization,
Wow.
and they've been going strong for a number of years now. And they bring all the mothers together who've lost kids to gun violence, and they're a support group for each other. And they've traveled with us to Ottawa. They participated in a lot of the community events that we're in. But it's a sad thing that has to be, but it's also something great that came as a result of zero gun violence movement being out there doing the work that we're doing. These
Hmm.
mothers came together, started doing some work with us, and then formed their own support group.
Right.
And they've been going strong for a long time. And Louis can tell you, I think, for some of them, I think that this group has just been sort of a real blessing to some of them. And they're in the media now. They're part of documentaries and all kinds of amazing work that they're doing to bring awareness to gun violence and get legislation changed and all of that. So, I think us coming together as a community, these are all of the types of things that can happen. Stop worrying, asking about what are they going to do, and ask yourself, what can I do? And I'm not saying that you have to start an association or an organization, but like, what can you do in your community? Can
Yeah.
you just spend a little bit of time with a young person that you see in your neighborhood? Check up on them, ask them how school going. Like, it doesn't take a lot.
And guns is not the answer, because I think, you said it before. A lot of them just think the killing is the answer to the pain that they feel, to the loneliness that they feel, to the displacement that they feel. And even in our own lives, I remember my sister's best friend. He was taken down by the Galloway boys. He left home at 7 in the morning, Omar, and at 7:30 he was gone. And they asked him for, I remember they were asking him, for some directions, and they were, having this conversation. He was like, "No, you're not looking for me." He left home to watch wrestling to go by his friend. And at 7:35, home all day, he was gone because they didn't like the answer he gave, and and years have gone by, and that pain, knowing that your loved one, your child, has been taken by the gun that could have been avoided, is so hard. And then we deal with those that have been injured by the gun, and they
Hmm.
live with it daily. Like right now, I see Stacy Walcott on the line, and Stacy, her kids were shot in a playground in June of 14 of 2018, and in Scarborough. And I commend Stacy, because we're going to bring Stacy on the show one day soon, because looking at what she has done, and writing about it, and her kids talking about their experience. It's mothers like this who want to, through this pain, they are talking through this pain, and there's so much that they have to go through. So what you guys are doing, I don't take it lightly. And the fact is, we're not just waiting on the government. We are showing. Sometimes you have to show the government, because they're people too. They're people too, that sometimes they don't know the answers, and we as community have to step up. What do you think are some of the contributing factors, like the outside contributing factors, that are adding to the influence of what, the gun? This is the
Okay,
answer.
so let me answer it this way. Gun violence does not happen in a vacuum. You go to school, you get a report card, and the report card tells you if you passed or you failed. We look at gun violence as a report card. If we fail in these areas, there's going to be violence in your society. So if you fail in terms of poverty, housing, employment opportunity, family, right? If you fail in these areas,
Education.
educate, yes, if you fail in these areas, violence has to take place. But it's not only gun violence, it's domestic violence, it's relationship violence, it's drug violence, it's suicides, right? All these forms of violence take place when people feel left out, or they don't have any value in their life, or their identity or self-esteem is at the low end of the scale. Then violence. Somebody said the other day on a show that we were doing that their violence that they're perpetuating is their form of therapy, because they've grown up in that environment, and everything is internalized.
Wow.
So
Their
by getting
violence is their
violent
therapy.
is their
I'm
therapy.
still stuck there. I'm still stuck there, Louis. Their violence, I've never heard that before. Their violence to them is their form of therapy.
Yes, that's that where there's retaliation, where there's getting payback, whatever it is. This is their form of therapy. Like I talk about, and I'm gonna let Danny at this perspective, but when you throw a brick into a pond, you get a big splash,
Mhm,
and then the ripples come out, right?
mhm.
But after a period of time, Nicole, guess what? The ripples subside, and you don't even know that anything happened. When you're dealing with gun violence, and you throw that brick into the pond, and the ripples come out, it never subsides. The ripples just get bigger and start having more impact with others, and it becomes generational violence. It becomes like it just gets bigger and bigger, and that's why we have to stop it, because once it gets out there, you don't know who's going to be impacted when and how, because a lot of it is internalized and not dealt with. What do you think, Danny?
Well, I want to go back and acknowledge Evelyn. Evelyn, she just put a comment up here earlier. So Evelyn's our sister who started the other organization, and she's doing amazing work with mothers. So we definitely want to give Evelyn a shout out. She's been working with us for a long time. So thank you, Evelyn. I think that, one of the things that we have to say is we have to say the T word, and that's trauma. There's a lot of trauma, undiagnosed trauma in our community. And if somebody can say that is their shooting somebody is their form of therapy, obviously there's a lot of trauma in our community. And part of the challenge is that we, as a society and as communities, we don't really deal with violence until the after effect. We don't deal with it till after, right? Like, where are the intervention points that we need to come in before this even happens? And I think that's the part of the big challenge. And the intersection points are the education system, the police system, the justice system, employment, all the things that Louis talked about. But people just don't wake up like this. We have to understand that there is a lot of trauma from relationships. And I've said this before, but I'll say this again. We don't talk about this. About 7 or 8 years ago, I went to speak to a group of young people at a church. There was like 250 or 300 teenagers there. So it might have been 8 years ago. At the time, I brought my girlfriend with me, Trudy, who's now my wife. So I go speak, and I was talking about how finding your passion is kind of like the best education you can get, because once you're passionate about something, you want to learn as much as you can about that. And so I was talking to these young people about, what are you curious about right now? Explore that, find mentors, study it, learn it, jump on YouTube. So I gave this talk, and then afterwards, I opened it up for questions. And so a couple of them asked questions about, how do I find the thing that I'm passionate about? But then a majority of them started asking me questions about my relationships. They said, "Oh, that's your girlfriend? How long have you guys been together? What do you do when you guys get in an argument?" And all of these things, right? So I stopped the question and answer, and I realized at that particular time, most of us have never seen healthy relationships. And what we've seen is very toxic relationships with your mom and maybe your father, your mom and boyfriends or whoever. And so that's trauma, right? And then you carry that on with you. So in that moment, we split up the boys and the girls, and Trudy took the girls and I took the boys. And they just started asking me questions about, what is it like to be a man and be in a relationship, and how do you deal with things, with your girlfriend if this doesn't go right, and some guy trying to step to it. All of these questions that you would ask a male figure in your life. And that's what I realized. I realized that we don't see healthy relationships. And as a result, that trauma and what we see trickles down to us. And so it's easier for you to treat some young teen to treat a girl this way, or a
Yep.
girl to accept it because her mom accepted it, or he saw his dad do this, right?
Transgenerational trauma happening.
So that's what we have to we have to, that's part of the challenge that we face as well. The trauma that's just undiagnosed that we just don't acknowledge because, I grew up in a neighborhood where nobody's father was around and it was normal. Like nobody father, like maybe two guys in my neighborhood's father was around out of 25 of us. Right. So it becomes normalized. The trauma just, you just take it. Right. And it becomes internalized, and then it comes out and manifests itself in ways where you just don't care about nobody else. You just become hard. And so that's what Louis talking about.
And then
Yeah.
one other thing that you need to look at, Nicole, is the gun violence that we're seeing today is different from the gun violence we saw 15, 20 years ago. Access to guns, guns
Mm.
coming across the border, the age of the people using the guns, the absence of codes. Like when you speak to
Yes. Speak about
OGs
that.
of the
The
past,
absence of the codes. I don't think people understand the
no,
absence of
there were codes. There were codes. You do not do this. You do not do that. But you can do this, right? Now we have young people carrying guns that are 15, 14. They don't care. There's no code. So what we're seeing is a lot more innocents being shot. The retaliation is not me against you. It's against me against your community. So me coming into your community and shooting it up, they see that as being okay. So when that happens, someone's going to come into my community and shoot. And no matter who it is,
it's like this badge, and there's so much that you guys are saying there that we're unpacking. Um, because when we even think about social media and the TV, one of my pet peeves is that we have this beautiful channel called BET, but for some reason in Canada we only show the violent shows that BET shows. We don't show the whole gamut of what black entertainment is all about. They have I literally feel is on purpose. I believe strongly it is
Absolutely.
part of the systemic racism
Yeah,
that
it is.
they choose to show certain things on BET in Canada. Because I know when I call my mom in Trinidad, she's not seeing what I'm seeing.
Hmm.
When I call my friends in the US, they have a whole plethora of BT that you're seeing. And so when they're showing black shows on television here, they choose the CRTC. I don't know who the heck it is. Whoever chooses, they are BT, CBC, I don't care who it is. They are showing shows that always perpetuate black the black community in a very violent way, in a fatherless way, in a motherless way. We're not showing examples because we know there are good men like you and Danny out there doing stuff. We've had people on the show showing fatherhood. But if we're lacking it in the community, and if they only are seeing stuff on their relationship is to the TV or to the computer, their example is what they're being shown right here in Canada. I'm not even talking about the US. Right here in Canada, the example sucks.
It's deliberate.
the influencers now are social media. Access to the gun is easier to get a gun than a job. Come on, right? The lack of codes, right? The retaliation factor, the amount of innocents being shot. These this has changed the characteristics of gun violence. The influences is social media, big one, right? And media. So who is going to change the narrative? Who's going to come up with solutions? Because if we don't deal with this now, we have a bigger problem tomorrow.
And I think, tell me something. You guys are out there doing it, and you have an array of a background. But people who are sitting at home and saying, I'm too scared. Let's be real. Okay, let's keep it real. I'm sitting in my house. I might be living wherever I'm living, because Scarborough, different parts of Scarborough, there's different parts of the West End, there's different parts of the Northeast End. But I'm sitting in my little hole, in my little cubby hole here, and I'm too scared to even get involved in this. What if they retaliate against me? Like somebody said to me, you sure you want to do a show about guns and violence? Because are you putting yourselves in harm's way now? Are you going to become a target? And so people are so scared. Very few want to get involved. What can we do to change that narrative to get people to want to be involved so that we can change our city, our country. Because I know there was a big shooting. Sarah Oyango out of Ottawa was talking about a big shooting in Ottawa this weekend, you know, and we look at, Caden Francis 16 this weekend, Siobhan Jones,
Hmm.
shot up in the apartment building. And that was just the Saturday. I'm not even talking about yesterday or the Friday.
Let's keep it real. You said let's keep it real.
Let's keep
Let's
it
keep it
real.
real for those people. You know how much mothers I know that this was the last thing that they thought would happen to them. Their son went out. They woke up that morning
Hmm.
and he went out and he didn't come back home. We don't know when it's going to strike next and who is going to be the victim. So are we going to sit down and do nothing? When I was growing up in Spanish Town in Jamaica, I had 10 mothers and 10 fathers. I don't know where they all came from. But everybody figured that they had a say in keeping Louis on the straight line. And if I did something wrong, I had to account for it somehow. On my best days, I could avoid maybe 5, 6 of them, right? But come Sunday, when I went to church, they would catch up with me. And I had to explain, right? So that was a community in action where everybody was involved. Today in our society, everybody's in their silos. Everybody's just dealing with their current issue
Yep.
until something happens.
Yep.
Until something
Until it hits
happens.
their doorstep. Until it hits their doorstep and it becomes their
And it
problem.
says, so are we going to sit down and wait and hope? Or are we going to roll up our sleeves and get engaged? Because Danny alluded to it earlier on. Just talking to somebody and saying, how you doing? How was your day? Right? Can make a difference. It can buy some time. It can
No,
buy.
it
We have to
plants
get
a seed,
involved.
but it plants a seed. So we're not saying you got to be out here walking the streets with zero gun violence movement. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, you don't have to. But why don't you have a conversation with some young person in your neighborhood? Why don't you go and watch a basketball game? Why don't you go and go to the community center and say, ask them, can you start a little after school program?
Life
Right?
skills. Life
Like,
skills. You spoke about it, Danny. The life skills of just relationships. That was so huge. Like they don't even have life skills.
well,
Go
it
ahead,
doesn't
Danny.
take much. It doesn't take. So here's an example. Here's another example. One of the people that work with us, her name is Ernie, and she used to have this basketball tournament, Youth Against Violence basketball tournament. And I think she's had what, 10 or 12 of them, Louis? These were kids from different neighborhoods, priority neighborhoods, like 10 teams that came together to play in this tournament. She had at least 10 of them, not one incident, right? And we would get sponsors and zero
Yeah.
gun violence would come and we would speak to these young men in between the games. And here's what you have to understand. We would be at these games and we would see a whole bunch of mothers and maybe one or two fathers.
Right.
We hardly saw any fathers at these games. I'm talking a whole weekend of games, and we would see a couple of guys there, and so it's easy for you as an individual to say, you know what, I don't, maybe my kid doesn't play sports or I don't even have a kid in this tournament, but
Mhm.
I'm just going to go and show up just to so the youth can see my face. I know
The
a
men
couple
need
of
to
them.
come out. So
I know
you're
a
saying
few of
the
them. I'll
men
go
need
and
to
watch
come
them.
out.
Right?
The men need
It
to come out.
it doesn't take much. See,
Hmm.
we're all thinking extreme, but like it's planting the seed. That's what
Yes.
saved me. It's all of these people in my neighborhood, basketball coaches, teachers, my grandmother, all of these people that would just drop little things on me. And one day it just hit me at age 18. I'm not going down the road of going in and out of jail and doing these things. It's because of all of those little seeds that were planted throughout my years growing up in community housing.
Hmm.
And so all you got to do is make up your mind. Do you just want to be somebody who's a farmer and plant a few seeds? Louis
And
just told you, people run up to us all the time. I heard you guys speak 6 years ago, 5 years ago. I remember that one thing that you said. You told me to, get some goals. Like they run up on us all the time telling us these things. So people are listening. And it doesn't just have to be us. It can be anybody who's on this, who's listening to this or watching the replay.
Yep.
Spend a little bit of time with a young person, plant a couple seeds, drop a little bit of things on them, let them know that you care, that you're checking on them, and you'll be surprised at how far that could go. You'd be surprised.
Very true. And I like what Donna is saying here. Donna Alexander has been on this show and she has been working with youth. I lose track. Donna, she works at the SAPAC program and she speaks on many mental health issues and she's been dealing with youth across our city and fighting for our youth. And we've adapted a Eurocentric values of individualism to our detriment. Too often, if you try to intervene when young people are acting out, the parents will not be pleased. And that's true. Remember the time when, okay, come on, you went and do something in front of, Auntie Joan house. And by the time you get home, your mother already know what you did. But Auntie Joan already told you off before you got home. And
And they,
now if
and,
you
and they
talk to
didn't
the
have cell
sister,
phones. They didn't have cell phones. They
come on
didn't
now.
have whatever. But they somehow they knew.
And here's the thing. You talk to somebody's child now, you see them doing wrong, they say, well, don't talk to my child.
Yeah.
So what? We allow them to just do whatever they want to do. Like as we're sitting right here talking, you know, here's what comes across. Shooting just happened at Keel and Finch as we're speaking. So we have the parents of the shooter as in pain, and then we have the victims of the shooter in pain and their families. And that's what people don't realize. There's always two sets of people that are affected when this violence happens,
Hmm.
and we need to remember that. Now, Sarah Oyanga out of Ottawa, we got to get you on Sarah's show in Ottawa. Please talk to us about the role played by weak conflict resolution skills. One family in Ottawa whose 18-year-old son was stabbed to death breaking up a fight has started a foundation to teach those skills to little kids. That's amazing. So we're talking about conflict resolution skills. You guys want to take that one?
I'm gonna say something about that. I was on a call last week, and we were talking about victim supports uh, for mothers impacted by violence or anybody impacted by violence. And I looked at the screen of the people that were participating, that had organizations were doing things, and they all seem to be have the same look: middle-aged white women, right? Uh, with a Eurocentric training and academics.
Hmm.
The people that need to be speaking to these kids have to look like them. They have to be culturally sensitive and understanding. There's a man that we're working with. His name is Ricky Atkinson. He
Yes.
was the leader of one of the biggest gangs in the city of Toronto. Spent over 30 years in jail for being a gang leader, a gun runner, bank robber, right? Over 30. So one day we're talking and I said to him, Ricky, was there a time in your life, because clearly you're a leader, was there a time in your life where you could have gone another way? And before I could get the sentence out of my mouth,
Hmm.
he said yes. So I said, holy smokes, you didn't even think about it. I guess he had a long time to think about it. But still, he said yes. So I said, tell me. He said, when he was a youngster, if there was somebody around him that said to him, Ricky, you're not going that route. You need to go this route, and I'm going to make sure. But he also said somebody that he trusted. And because other people would tell him this, but you never listen to them. But he said, somebody that I trusted and respected. That was missing. And because of that, one of the biggest gang stories in the city of Toronto
I
took
know. Yeah, I
place.
know that one. Yep.
Ricky
But
Atkinson.
how can we build this trust? We talk about trust. How do we build this trust with the young people? What do members in our community? And I know the answer to the question. I think I know some of the answers to the questions, and I see Danny chopping at the bit here. Eh, look at his face. Look at the tone of his face. Um, what do we need to do to help build that trust of the young people in our community.
You got to do what you say you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these community centers get all this funding and this money and to do all of this work, and they don't do it. And so you're promising young people, oh, we're going to have these after school programs and this, and we're going to have that, and, late night basketball and all these things. And then you don't do it. Your office hours are 9 to 5, right?
Talk about it.
Right.
Talk
You're,
about it.
you're closed in the evenings during the summertime. We know that because we were running a mentorship program at a community center in Scarborough that was closed in the evenings in the summertime. And we had to call our contact on the cell phone to come and open up the community center. So do what you say you're going to do. Let's just start there. I mean, there's other things you can do, but if you're making promises to these young people, then just follow through with the promises that you're getting money to provide anyway. And on top of that, change your hours. But 9 to 5 is not, this isn't a bank. We're not, you're working in a community. 9, 10 o'clock, the community center should be open. Why are you closed at 5 o'clock?
And that's what gets them off the street, because when they're bored, they're going to be on the streets. Okay, so I'm just going to put a pet peeve out there. You guys tell me how you feel about it. So, and I have great respect for my government leaders because I know many of them work hard. I also recognize the gatekeepers, because sometimes we blame the government and we forget the gatekeepers, because in order to get to certain people, you need to go through the gatekeepers, right? You need to get, because a government can make a decision, but the person who is given the job to execute it is the one who's setting the hours, is the one that is saying to that person. But when we start talking about funding, how do you feel about when these funding models come out? Let's apply for funding, but we have these narrow windows. You have 2 weeks to apply for funding, but only the big organizations with big staff could meet those deadlines. Are you being impacted by these short, minuscule deadlines being given to organizations doing the work?
Go ahead, Louis. It's deliberate. Louis will tell you. Go ahead, Louis. Louis will tell you. Go ahead. I know he's locked and loaded. Go tell everybody about the funding Olympics. Tell them.
Nicole.
Funding Olympics. Let's go.
We call it the funding Olympics. The funding Olympics is basically when the funders come out with their funding proposals, they know who's going to get the gold, the silver, and the bronze. The big organizations with the fancy names that can do the fancy applications and have the contacts and whatever. And then the leftover funding, the community organizations have to compete amongst themselves to get their application in on time, saying the right things and looking the right way. But in order to do that, they have to undermine each other. They cannot work together, because if they work together or they share best practices, the other organization might scoop them and get the funding dollars. So there's this perpetual warfare, competition that's taking place between the organizations. So we cannot have collective impact. The organizations cannot put their best foot forward because one of the big drivers is funding. I need to get the funding for a period of time or for my program. So it's set up this way. So these organizations, the ones that have the big impact on the street, are the grassroots organizations.
Yep.
They're the ones that work hours is 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. Not 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. They're the ones that can engage who we call the shadow people. These are the people that, and it's not our name, they call themselves the shadow people. They live and they sleep and they eat in the shadows, but they also work in the shadows. Because that's the place that they can operate without your rules. And in doing that, they can control the run-ins. And violence is part of how they work, right? Who's gonna connect with that population? So you can have all the programs you want from 9 to 5, delivered by people that don't look like the population that they're trying to reach.
Well, they're not even from those communities, most of them.
And that's another thing too, Danny. Never came from there, right? So we say, look, we need to evaluate the program and the funding better if we want collective impact or program impact. And we have something we call it the 4 R's, which is, are you delivering the right resources to the right people at the right time and in the right place?
Mm.
If you can answer that yes, your program is successful. But how much of these organizations can even get 2 of those 4 right?
So
They're
this is a
delivering the right program, but it's the wrong people at the wrong time.
so as I'm sitting here listening to you, um, because as I said, it was my pet peeve, but I needed you to speak to it because you're living it, right? I don't have an organization, but I see the timelines. I have worked in the government and I see those timelines, and it I just don't understand these timelines. And I think people miss that systemic racism shows up in in these in these in these ways that can be so subtle, but it's so blatant to others. For others, they don't recognize it because they're not in that room, they're not in that lane, they don't have an organization, and they don't recognize. So for those of you live and on the replay, you're watching the Victory Speak show. I got Louis March and Coach Stone from the Zero Gun Violence movement. And we're talking about violence and gun violence and the resources and what needs to happen. And you just heard some really key things, because when we talk about the right place, the right time, the right people, the programming, the funding, the lack of relationship, the engaging, this is where I wonder, how can this community, because all this talk, and we demonize, we choose to look at Black Lives Matter as a demonized organization instead of dealing with, what, we're just saying Black Lives Matter, forget organizations, we're dealing with Black Lives Matter, we're dealing with the systemic racism that is blocking us in so many ways. When you sit facing these challenges that you're facing and seeing the demons around you, I call them the demonic forces, for lack of a better word, the demonic structures, right? Because they're demonic structures, because they're just evil. That's all I can just say. They're just evil. I'm not calling the people evil. I'm calling the system evil. I'm trying to figure out here, outside of people setting up programs and stuff, how do we, or what do you need, community organizations and the people listening live here, what can we do to come together to create systemic change in how we are approached?
You have to. You just said it. First of all, you have to come together. Louis been, part of. It's funny because today, we received this mayor's community safety award, and one of the things that Mayor Tory stepped up and he acknowledged Louis, but then he also said, we need to come together. Not one group of people cannot solve this gun violence issue by themselves. Louis only been saying that for 8 years, right? He's been telling people that. We've been talking about and that's part of the problem. We haven't come together, all 3 levels of government, community organizations, the education sector. We all need to come together. And we talked about having a Canada-wide symposium on violence and gun violence. It's not just a Toronto problem. It's not
Exactly.
we have to stop thinking that it's just about us.
Exactly.
This is happening all across our country, in Nova Scotia and Winnipeg. So we need to bring everybody together to talk about this. What's working? What are some of the programs and government impact that is working across the country, and have a major discussion about this. And these politicians keep running from this because they're like, it's easy for them to say, well, I'm not getting the federal money. And the federal saying, well, the city, the city level and the province, we need to all come together and listen to what can the education system do, right? What can the justice system do? What can the police, what everybody has a part in this. And we just keep deflecting by saying, well, our organization or the police can't do this. It's the same thing, the same way Zero Gun Violence movement started. What can you do? Stop talking about what you can't do.
Yep.
What is your piece? What is your piece? Everybody has a role to play, but we're all working in silos and we're not coming together to discuss this in a big way so that we can all take ownership and accountability for our part.
So is it that we need to call, do we need to call the elders in our community who have, I don't know. I'm just sitting here thinking because I am aware of some of the problems, and the more I talk about, because you know me, I'm all about advocacy. I've been, when it comes to mental health and housing, I've been
Yeah.
advocating for that for 26 years.
Right.
And so I get to see all the other caveats of it. And so is it a time for some of the elders who, I mean, the elders, I know some of them are tired because they've been fighting a fight, but how do we create this change in the system? Because if John Brown is working in this big organization and this big organization and they're getting the funding, I'm just saying to you, if you're listening live and on the replay, some new organizations were started in this pandemic, um, with some really well-known people who have the backing of corporate Canada, and you don't think the gun violence can come to your home, but it can come to your home. So, do you care about your community enough that we can say that these rules that you put in place for funding for organizations like Zero Gun Violence, that they can't meet your thresholds with these short timelines, that has to stop? Now, it's possibly an election year, right?
Not possibly, it is.
Right.
It
Well,
is.
I'm trying to be nice.
Exactly.
It's an election year. So, as an election year, right? And I don't just want promises. I
Mhm.
mean, I know housing. One thing, I'm not sure if you're aware that what is different this year, that in the preparation with housing, is the different housing organizations came together and now they formed a movement to put housing on the table. They're not talking in silos this year. So what is it? What do you need? Do we need a room? Do we need some facilitators? Do we need, the black caucuses sitting at the table from all levels of government and saying, hey, if this is an election year and this matters, we need you in the room. And these are the challenges. And we need certain things fixed now.
Part of the
What do
problem
you
is
need, Louis? What
part
do
of the
you need?
problem is political leadership. Lack of, sorry. We have a premier of Ontario. His name is Doug Ford. One of the first things he did when he became premier, he cut $25 million out of after-school programming for young people. And that same $25 million, he gave it to the police and say, you deal with this problem. I'm from the old school. I believe in having more boots on the ground. So we'll get more boots on the ground to deal with this issue. That is total ignorance of the problem of what is needed. Because the police turned around and said, we can't police or arrest ourselves out of this problem by ourselves. So the political leadership is lacking. Danny mentioned it. We've been addressing this issue about the three levels of government coming together, because how are the guns getting into the communities, Nicole? Who's
Mhm.
bringing them across the border? Is it the young people? Hell no,
No.
because they're going to get stopped at the border. Someone else bigger is bringing the guns in and selling them into the communities. So the federal government needs to do a better job at the border.
Mhm.
Doug Ford and the provincial government has to do a lot better in terms of education and policing. I know it filters down into the municipal area, but when it comes to poverty, housing, transportation, look, the city of Toronto, who is the biggest employer in the city of Toronto, will not hire anybody with a criminal record.
Mhm. Yep.
Imagine that.
Even if it's a small thing, they're not hiring them.
We had two young people, sorry, that got jobs at Metrolinx. They passed all the tests, they did everything right, they passed the interview and they got the jobs and they were actually working. And then when their record checks came back, they said they're not hireable because they had issues with the law. And they found out that those two had nothing to do with the law. Maybe a relative or a friend did. And the way it was written it up is that, well, if their friend or their family member was involved, that means you must be involved. And they lost their jobs, right? So is there a way out? So when you ask the questions about the politicians, last summer, we had protests and demonstrations every weekend. Sometimes there were three of them going on at the same time. The young people came out, Nicole, and they made their voice heard.
Yeah.
It scared the bazooka out of these people. But if we can get those young people to get political, that means vote in the upcoming elections.
Yes.
We will change the political landscape in the city of Toronto, in the province of Ontario, and in Canada. Humongous. Like we will change it dramatically. But those young people now have to be the ones that are driving and not
Yeah.
being passengers.
And it comes
Sorry,
back to
Danny,
the
I took that
trusting,
from your
like,
book.
because like, how do they trust? Because we got to get them to trust.
No, we don't
Because
trust them. They're from the old guard. That's what Doug Ford said. I'm from the old school.
yeah,
Here's 25 million. We're gonna have more. No, we need a different approach. That means we need different people at the table. And these young people, what can you do? Run for political office, or make sure that you show up in the voting pool. If you do that, the political landscape will change dramatically.
right,
And that will scare the bazookas out of these people that are there right now and force them to either do the right thing or move out of the way.
right.
Well, I think, yeah, Gideon's Army. No, I never heard of them, but I'm going to look them up. But, Louis, I think to add to what you're saying, though, is what you alluded to is like, why do we keep asking for permission? Like, it's still the same thing. As a community, we're still saying the government needs to do it. What you just said it. When these young people came out, in droves, it scares people. We need to learn to organize ourselves in terms of our vote and say that's what they understand. We have to stop asking them to do, like, we need you guys to know. We have to organize ourselves in a way that we vote for the people that we want to see in power, that are going to make the legislative changes and all these other things that we want to see. We have to stop stepping back saying, we need you guys to do this. What are we going to do to organize ourselves so that we demand what we want? We're not asking you guys. We're not asking you to cut the police funding. We're telling you to cut the police funding as a community.
And if you're going to keep the police funding, then you need to up the community funding, double what you're keeping the police funding at. I'm just saying, because you see, sometimes people hear the word cut, right? And they get defensive. So keep the police funding, but up the community funding, double what the police funding is. I'm just saying, that's just a thought.
Well, it's more about a reallocation.
Yeah.
It's about you don't need many officers. Go back to when you had community police officers who were in the community, from the community, who knew people in the community. Go back to community events and organizations and after school programs. The police used to have all of those things. They cut everything. So if it's not about cutting, it's about reallocating the funds that you have, because we already know putting more officers on the street is not working. There's lots of statistics that say, actually, as more police on the street, Louis can tell you the stats, the crime goes up. So it ain't working. It's not working.
You become on the defensive and instead of being on the offensive, and Sarah's putting up here, could Operation Black Vote help with registering and empowering young Black voters? That they can too. And I think what has to happen, though, is we also have to educate our young Black, and not even just only Black, but our young people on what the issues are and why their voice matters. I think they need to understand that their voice matters. And from what you said, even last year, when they came out and they were speaking, because they're so smart and they operate at a different level. When they come out and they put solutions on the table, people hear them and they get involved. But we have to equip them. And if we have a lot of our elders and mature people who criticize our youth instead of empowering our youth. And I think it's time to empower them and equip them. This is how you navigate the process. This is what you need to do. What do you need? Are we asking them, what do they need? What do they want?
But Nicole, this is Louis and I had this conversation many times. A few years ago, I spoke at City Hall to a couple hundred young people. And these were all young people who had been doing, they had their own councils, youth councils.
Right.
So they had already been doing amazing work in their communities, right? So somebody from City Hall gets up and says, You're all leaders of tomorrow. We believe in you, right? I get up and speak after this person in a breakout room. I said, look, what people are going to tell you is that you're all leaders of tomorrow. Well, the next time somebody tells you that, I want you to look them dead in their face and say, no, I'm not. You're a liar. I'm a leader of right now.
That's right.
Why do we put off young people to say tomorrow's your day, or in the future you can do this?
Mm-hmm.
There's 11 and 10 and 12-year-olds right now that are standing in front of United Nations, that are started food drives in their neighborhood. Why are we telling people to wait till tomorrow? Because if you tell a young person you can wait until you get older to be a leader,
Yes.
then that means that they don't have to act like one right now. Right? That means they don't have to take accountability for their actions. Why are we telling people you're leaders right now? So let's empower them and let them feel the way that they should be as leaders. Go out there.
That's one of the messages that we deliver. You're not leaders of tomorrow. You need to lead today, whether it's at home, whether at school, whether at work, whether it's in the community, because these political leaders aren't doing anything that you can't do. They ain't doing anything that you can't do if you have the right backative and supports and you are willing to go that route, right? So we have to change that mindset that the thing about empowerment is it comes from within. They've got to realize that the solution is not out there, it's in here.
It's interesting, Joan's comment, because this really speaks to a very big part of the problem. When we and I the powers that be recognize that we're divided in our own community, right? They play on this division. Um, and we as a community we have to start taking, from what I'm seeing Joan saying here, we have to start taking a stand and break this divisiveness that is since beyond time. And we need to find ways to recognize the lives of ourselves and our community is more important than these power plays that are happening out here, and that you can get this money and you're going to be in charge of the funding for the entrepreneurial program. And, I have this title. And meanwhile, Louis and Coach Stone, and you have the mothers. This is what is getting to me. The mothers who have lost their children are the ones that are stepping up, but you're busy in your glass houses criticizing. Oh, I think I might forget. Danny, you might have to start
But, but
facilitating the show, because I think
yeah,
I'm losing myself here.
yeah. But Nicole, what Joan just said is something that we don't even talk about.
Hmm.
When you go and you see the Chinese community, where did most of the Chinese community come from? Where do they come from? China. When you go and talk to the Indian community, where do they come from? India. When you go talk to the Black community, where do we come from? 50 different countries.
That's right.
So there's already an inherent mistrust, because you're not from Jamaica, you're not from Ghana, you're not from Nigeria, you're not from Brazil. So we have to work against all of that.
Yes.
And we're not even having a conversation about that, right? We have to come together. That's a big hurdle that we have to overcome as a Black community, because there's mistrust, because we're not even from the same place.
And
we're not even from the same place.
The young people are seeing it. So they don't even have you ever seen, tell me what you're encountering when young people that you meet talk about this divisiveness in the community. They see it. Some of them they don't have the experience and the baggage that the older folks come with. What are they saying to you when they see this as we say, crabs in a barrel? Because crabs don't normally live in a barrel, but we put all the crabs in a barrel. What are they seeing when they see this fighting mentality within us?
I think one thing to consider, right, is the government's role in this divide and conquer. It comes in many different shapes and sizes.
Mm.
And one of the things that really sticks out for us is that a lot of the community organizations are funded by the government.
And they're afraid to lose their funding. I'm just going to put that cap. That was a bubble. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. That was a bubble.
There was a shooting in Falstaff Community Center at the beginning of the year. And I went out there to speak. And there was somebody from one of the major community organizations there with me. And I spoke frankly and challenged the three levels of government that were there to figure this out by coming together and coming up with a comprehensive plan.
Mm-hmm.
And after I finished, right, I went over to see the person I was with. He said, Louis, what you said needed to be said and was so accurate. But if I said it, guess what would happen to my funding tomorrow?
Gone. I know.
So what are the drivers? Who are the influencers here? So you have your organizations and you have good intentions and you have incredible people, but they can't do what is necessary to be done to have an impact on solving this problem because there's somebody that's controlling them for political reasons.
And that
Right?
is so true because some of them are locked into, they want to make the change. And you're so right. And I'm glad you brought up that point because I know many people in the different areas in the fields, mental health and stuff, they want to make a change, but they're locked in. And so they make the choice of, you know what, let me at least try and do a little bit in here, then come out. And there's some of us that have to be the disruptors on the outside. Like, I may not get the funding for the Victory Speaks show because I'm a disruptor, right? Whereas if my show was all pretty and, prettied up and stuff, those are the people that will get the funding. So I really get it. And we have to come behind those people that cannot do the disruption and say to them, okay, how can I help you to help change the narrative? Because we need people on the inside. And I like the fact that, Louis, that you got that honest feedback that said, I can't say what you said.
Well, you have to stop. But we also have to stop being dependent on the government, right? Like, I used to manage a career center many years ago in Nova Scotia, right? And they cut our funding. And so one of the things that they agreed, so this is crazy. This is exactly what Louis is saying. They allowed us to generate a certain amount of our own money. So we were a career center. So we started doing career services for universities and big companies that were letting go of 50, 100 people. We went in and did outplacement services, right? But I mean, that's just a small example. But whenever you're dependent on someone to feed you, you can't talk about that person that's feeding you. You can't make changes. You can't try to step outside of the lines because they're the ones that are feeding you. And so it's very difficult for a lot of these organizations to, like Louis said, they might have the good intentions, but when your funding is at jeopardy, that's a lot of people's lives that are going to be affected. And so that's part of the problem. That's why we don't take government money. I'm still trying to work on Louis. I'm trying to work on Louis a little bit because they already know. They know when they give us money, they already know who we are, what we're about. But Louis still
don't take any money from them. We don't trust their dollars.
Right.
We don't trust the strings attached. And you know something, Nicole? It doesn't cost money to care. It doesn't cost money to care. The work that we do, right? We do it because we care and we want to make a difference. Nobody in Zero Gun Violence Movement gets paid a red cent. You might get an honorarium, but that honorarium is split up.
Yep.
Or it might buy T-shirts, or it might buy something. But nobody gets a salary. But the government cannot control us, right? And the thing about it is that when we walk into a room, we walk in with an assortment of skill sets. So you can't throw words at us.
They underestimate you when they walk in the room. I know that when you guys walk in the room, they underestimate you, and then you drop it like it's like fire bombs.
The words getting out. Don't worry.
I know they underestimate you.
But Louis, this is an opportunity to talk about our partnership with Sunrise. Since we're
I was just about to ask you about your partnerships because you have 40 partners, but you have some people, and I like your partnership with Sunrise because Danny knows. But when Sunrise was Sunrise, I was their publicist before when they were going.
Is that right? Oh, it's a small world.
Yeah, it's a small world. So
it's a small world. No, we got the phone call. We got the phone call from Sunrise. The person is 24 years old. Mm-hmm. Marcus Davenport is his name. Mm-hmm. And he's running 25 Sunrise restaurants across the province of Ontario. Most of the GTA, sorry. And he says, we want to work with an organization that is making a difference. And he came up and we had a couple meetings with him, and he was testing us out. We were testing him out to see what he was really about. And then he offered us some money, and which I wouldn't take. And he says, "You're the only person I offer money to that doesn't take it." Right? That's what he said. Right? And even when he was giving us money, I was reluctant to take it because I wanted to see him in action. Right? But Sunrise now wants to collaborate with the Zero Gun Violence Movement. And when you go into the store, they're going to put a button on that debit machine so you can make a donation to Zero Gun Violence Movement. And they want to match whatever donations come in through that. But they want to also come in and speak to the young people to show what can be done. Here, I'm a prime example. I'm 24 years old, and I'm in charge of 25 operations across, right? And we want to give back to the community. And in fact, they just started a summer program, right, where they will pay 50% of the administrative fees for young people to attend this program. So this is where corporate Toronto, Sunrise, is stepping up.
And let's
I've
be
had a
clear.
couple more phone calls since from other organizations, corporations that want to see how they can work with us.
And let's be clear. Sunrise is not, it's a multi-million-dollar. We need to let people know that. It's not just a mom and pop restaurant, Caribbean restaurant. It's a multi-million-dollar restaurant chain. And when Marcus came to us, he didn't just say, you know, we want to partner with you to do work in the community. He said, we want to partner with you to do work in the communities because we're in the same, our restaurants are in those same communities.
Yep.
So they hire people from those communities. They try to move people up to management from those communities.
And
so
ownership. And into ownership.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and into franchisees.
That's
So,
right.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So when they came to us, I mean, people approach us for partnerships all the time, but like Louis said, we had to understand what their motives were because we just didn't want to be the face of, you know, some corporation saying, hey, we're out here doing work in the community, and they really weren't. But, you know, they've stepped up, and like Louis said, they're doing a lot of work in our community. We're happy to have this partnership. It's not just about the money. For us, we want to see what you're doing. We want to see you in action. And so far they are. So far they are. So we're happy to have that partnership. And as Louis said, this opens the door to other partnerships to come because people are seeing that the work that we're doing, we collaborate with over 50 organizations. It's not just us, right? We're going into communities, collaborating, organizing peace walks and mentorship programs, and bringing other people to the table with some of these government meetings that they wouldn't have access to. So, yeah, we're definitely, you know, very fortunate that, you know, we get a little bit of this attention and that people know who we are and that people want to come on board with us.
Well, if you have the ability to open some doors for zero gun violence, I would encourage you to. And you know, how can people get involved? Like, what can they do to be a part of your organization? What do you need right now?
In terms of, so first of all, we're not an organization, we're a movement.
I know you're a movement. Sorry, my
Yeah.
bad.
No, so we don't have a president, we don't have a head office, we don't have paid staff, we're not applying for government funding. We're a collaboration of over 50 organizations, agencies. None of them with any dotted lines. It's depending on the community and the initiatives there and how we can add value to the work that they're doing. So we help facilitate, we bring people together, we bring a lot of experience to the table in terms of the skill sets. We have organized, like we did one March, I think it was 2-3 years ago, where we were expected 300 people to show up, and over 3,000 people showed up. Right? So we have some incredible people doing some incredible work. So this is what we bring to the table. We bring access, resources, experience to the table, but also we have that common objective. Zero gun violence in our city, not for some, but for all. We share that very bold and ambitious objective. And we know that it can be done because it's already exists in the city, right? And also because we don't take government funding, we're able to speak our mind. We're able to build trust with the population that people can seldom do because they know our background and our history. So that's what we bring to the table. But in terms of organizational stuff, there's too many organizations out there already. They don't need no more, right? What they need is facilitation, collaboration, coordination, and that's what we bring to the table. And our track record speaks for it, right? So that's what we bring to the table. If people want to get involved, of course there's space. We got some tremendous volunteers. I had one volunteer the other day. He was a Syrian refugee. A refugee from Syria phones up and says, "What can I do to help? I left my country where there was so much violence, and I come here, there's so much gun violence. What can I do to help?" And we met at our regular meeting spot, which is at Tim Hortons, right? We had a coffee and we spoke, right? A Syrian refugee, right? We had a phone call from Mexico. Mexico, yeah. They wanted to do an interview about gun violence in the city of Toronto. I said, "Why are you in Mexico phoning Toronto to find out about gun violence? Don't you have enough violence in Mexico?" And she said, "No, we wanted to find out why the uptick in violence in Toronto, what's going on, and were there Mexican people contributing to it?" And I says, "Hell no. This is a made in Toronto problem."
Wow.
Sri Lanka.
Right? So we're going to continue to do this work. And people are volunteering left, right, and center. So depending on what we're doing, for example, we're going to be organizing a Mother's Day march. And we're trying to pick a date, but we're going to bring all the mothers who have suffered losses to gun violence together. Because their trauma that is undiagnosed and not dealt with is a problem. These mothers need to wake up in the morning and feel good. They need to smile again, right? So we have to provide spaces and opportunity for them to feel good again. And it's tough doing.
Mm.
It's
So
tough doing.
I heard three things there so far, right? Simple things that somebody, even if they don't want to come out on March and stuff like that. If you're in the mental health field, trauma health field, we need coaches. We need life coaches. We need psychiatrists. We need psychologists. We need therapists for mothers, fathers, and their children.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to even take it down so simple for some of you who think you can't contribute. Louis said, I don't know if you caught it. We go to Tim Hortons for our meetings. It's our regular place that we go. Here's what you can do. You can mail in a bunch of Tim Hortons cards. Zero gun violence.
Yeah, we take donations too.
We
Listen,
take donations.
right? And we take donations, but sometimes people may say, you know what? Let me drop a love gift because sometimes it's about. I always tell people it's random acts of kindness. That Tim Hortons card, you can give it to someone that you're meeting with and say, "Go have a coffee on us."
Ah,
You see what I'm saying? I
no,
can
no.
do
Free
anything
tokens,
out there,
anything. Yeah.
right? And then you said you're getting phone calls from all over the world, and you have to return some of these phone calls. So somebody out there listening, we need some phone cards, and we need a phone plan. Okay? Because sometimes we think so big that you have to do other things. But some people may say, you know what, I can't get out there. I can't make a phone call. I can't do this, but I can do this. So we have to think out of the box and how you can help zero gun violence movement, as well as the people getting involved, the organizations getting involved. If you don't have a load of cash, let me tell you, even if you have a $5 Tim Hortons card, send that to the movement and they can use it to treat someone to a coffee and have a meeting. It might be to send a whole bunch of Tim Hortons cards and go down the street and give it to the youth and say, here's a love gift. Go have a hot chocolate on us. Go to Dairy Queen. Go have an ice cream and us, because we talked about love. So love is in the details. What can you share that can be so creative that can just show the love that you care? Now, as we wind down, I don't even want to wind down this conversation, but I'm just being
I
humble.
want to say something else, Nicole.
Oh, you're gonna have a lot to say. I'm not done with you yet. I'm
One
not done
thing I
with
want to say is that you know what? There's incredible people already doing incredible work,
you. Hmm.
right? And we have to bring them together. So how the government uses our differences against us, we must learn to use our differences as a strength.
Yes.
It takes a certain type of mindset because our backgrounds are so diverse in
Hmm.
terms of where we come from. If we bring that together and use that as a strength instead of a weakness, let the government do whatever they want,
Hmm.
but it's not going to break us. It's a different mindset. How do we turn a problem into an opportunity?
But
Yes.
Louis, I think that this is the perfect opportunity for people to understand the core zero gun violence movement team is made up of people with lots of different skill sets. We have, we have someone who used to shoot music videos. We have videographers. We have photographers. We have people, who've been incarcerated, who know the system. We have the core of our team is made up of people with so many different skill sets. That's why we're such an effective group when we come together. So for someone who's out there, what is your skill set? Like whatever it is, we can use you, right? It doesn't matter what it is. We play to everybody's strengths, right? We look at the zero gun violence movement videos, a year in review, that's people on our team,
Yes. I
right?
saw that. Yep.
So we all have different skill sets and we come together and we play to our strengths. So that's why you can get involved. Whatever your thing is, you can get involved. If
You
you're
need
good at
event planners,
organizing,
you need social media team, you
right,
need people who can help you
organizing
organize what you
events,
want to do. You need your
you know,
outreach people. You need every
signage, artistic graphic designers,
designers.
anybody,
But
whatever
And
also
your
this is
thing
also
ideas.
a way that young people who need experience can get experience. Like if you have a young person, this is a way that they can gain experience. And we need to stop moving in fear. And Louis, you went to my other question to you was, what was your message to the community? That's what I want from the two of you. As we're winding down, what is the message to your community, and what is your advice to this upcoming generation?
Okay, the message to the community. So the day when I spoke at the city council, they did that award. One of the things I said, I give thanks to my ancestors, the people that did a lot of the heavy lifting and have left their mark. We have a responsibility to continue that. We're not asking for people to change the way they live, but realize that you can make a contribution no matter how small. Anytime we have a dependency model or a dependency relationship with the government to solve this problem, we will never find a solution. Remember, I've been doing this work for 40 years. And the people that are successful are the ones that have done work independently of government. Independently of government. So we have to find a community objective. The first word in community safety is what? Community.
Yes. Hmm.
It's not police. It's not politicians. It's community. So let's start acting as community again. Because one person, like I saw a picture of the young man that got shot recently. I saw a smile on his face, a little young, bright person. I looked at the smile on his face, and that smile will never exist again. He was taken from us. So we all lose. Our community cannot be at its best when we're not doing our best. Our community cannot be at its best if we're not doing our best. And it is in our hands. It isn't that smile, we'll never see it again. I'm thinking of the mother, I'm thinking of the broken hearts. And it's affecting us all. Remember I spoke about the brick in the pond?
Hmm.
It's coming out. and it's not subsiding, and we're all paying a price. And how long are we going to continue to allow this to continue in its current state? So my message to the community is, let's bring community back into community. Let's bring unity back into community. And let's find a way to work together instead of a way to stay divided. That's my message to our community. Because one person shot, one person lost, we lose as a community. It's not according to the Eurocentric thing, what's in it for me. Our work has always been about community and family. I want to see people smiling again. I want to see communities feeling good again, right? Happy to come out at night, happy to go to the children's playground. And we're not seeing that in certain communities, and it's predominantly in our communities. Time for change. Change is now. That's my message.
What about to the young people, the upcoming generation?
What Danny spoke about, you're not leaders of tomorrow. We need you to lead today. Danny speaks about the fact that when he was trying to get out of his lifestyle that was, guns, drugs, gangs and stuff, a lot of people looked at him a different way and said, well, you're not one of us anymore. But he had the resilience and the determination to take his new path. And look at Danny now. Look at Danny now. So it's difficult to break out of that mindset because it's high risk, but it's high reward.
Mm-hmm.
If you need help, don't be afraid to ask.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's a lot of scavengers out there, and I know a lot of the haters out there. Be mindful. Find someone you trust that you can ask for help. Don't keep it to yourself and be afraid to step out of that comfort zone. To the young ones, your future is today. And we have a vested interest in your success. So don't feed into the division, the hating, and the negativity that's taking place. Be that shining light. Lead by example, knowing that there's people out there that will support you and be there for you. That's my message to the young ones. Don't give up on life. There's nothing wrong with dreaming for 100 years. There's nothing wrong with dreaming to be 100 years. But it takes effort to get there. Okay?
I love it. Danny?
What am I supposed to say after that?
Danny, you're the coach.
This guy just said everything. I can't say anything after that. But my message to the community is really just two words. It's love and hope. Love and hope. Because the reason that some of our communities are in the state that they're in is because there's no hope. Mm-hmm. Louis just said, some of these young people don't see themselves living past the age of 19. They don't see a future. There's no hope for the future. And I know what that's like. I've been in that situation. You don't even talk about what's happening tomorrow because you don't even know if you're going to make it. And that is a big challenge. If somebody can't see a future for themselves, then we have a problem. Mm-hmm. Where's the hope? Where's the dreams? Where's the maybe I can do this? We need hope. And then we need love. We need self-love. We need to start loving ourselves as individuals. We need to start caring about ourselves. We need to start loving other people in our communities and outside of our communities. And when we can get hope and love back, then we have a shot. But if we don't get that, we don't have a shot at not just ending gun violence. We don't have a shot at creating safe communities. We don't have a shot at young people stepping into their greatness and stepping into what they're meant to be. We just don't have a shot. If we have no love and no hope, then forget it. The worst thing that a young person can say when some drug dealer says, "Where are you going?" is, "I don't know." Mm. You ain't got nowhere to be? I don't know. Okay, well, I have something for you to do, young boy. Come over here. Where are you going? I'm going to the community center. I got a basketball practice. I got this study club. Where are you going?
Mhm.
We need some hope and love back in the community.
That is big. Like when the drug dealer says to you, the gangbanger says to you, where are you going? You have to have a place to go. I really, really like that. And so, what I'm going to ask you two more things. I'm like a preacher, right? You know that I don't have one close. I have like two
This sermon was
closes,
supposed
right?
to be over 45 minutes ago.
Who told you that? I didn't tell you
And
that.
another thing.
I didn't tell you that. I don't know where
It's like
you
a
got
black
that
church
idea
here.
from.
Oh my goodness. We're
You
going
missed
till
the conversation
12
Louis and I
o'clock
had.
at night. This is
You
midnight.
missed the conversation Louis and I had. I'm just gonna ask you, what are some of the key lessons that you guys have learned about yourself since you've been on this journey?
I think
I'm
it's
gonna go
about self. I
personal for
think
a minute.
it's about, for me, it's about self-determination. My vision is not about Louis. My vision is about a people that is struggling. And I come from the school of Marcus Garvey, where self-determination.
Mhm.
When we have dependency models, we always lose. The history is our evidence. So my lesson is self-determination and surround yourself with good people.
Mhm.
Good people that you trust, uh, and you know when the whistle goes that they'll be there. They're ready. And it's difficult at times, but I'm telling you, there's some incredible people out there. We're blessed because we have some good people. Uh, and that in itself is like one stick. It's easy to break, but when you put all the sticks together,
Yes.
right? So this is not a one-man journey. We travel together. We win together or we lose together. So that's one thing that I learned is that I can't do this. There's no way I could do this by myself. You got to be joking, right? Uh, Surround yourself with good people. Have a vision, have a goal, have a plan. Zero gun violence. That is the goal, and then work towards it.
I love it. So, Mr. Stone, Coach Stone, that's in the building. What have you learned about yourself in this process, my brother?
I learned that we all have the ability and the opportunity to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. And you're searching for it, but it might be right in front of you. You're out here saying, what can I do? I feel like I'm lost. I want to make an impact in my life. Well, the thing that you want to do could be that thing that you should be a part of that's bigger than you might be right in front of you. And so for me, that's what I learned. It was like I was doing things on my own, just like everybody who's involved in zero gun violence movement and every other movement and every other group and every other community organization. But when you're a part of something bigger than yourself, it sheds light on who you really are. Like I really learned like who I really am and what I really care about being a part of zero gun violence movement with the amazing team that we have and the amazing group of people. So that's one of the biggest things that I learned about myself. And the other thing is that sometimes you just have to do things afraid.
Hmm.
Sometimes when we're out here speaking to these groups or we're standing up in front of people or we're going to a neighborhood we don't know, it's not always the most easy feeling. Sometimes you're afraid, like for your safety, sometimes, but sometimes you're just afraid to voice your opinion because you don't know how people will react.
Right.
But you just got to do it afraid because the cause is bigger than your fear. Right. And so that's what I learned. Those are some of the things I learned about myself.
I love that. And so my last question for the two of you tonight is, with a look at the word victory. You're on the Victory Speak show, so you got to tell me what victory looks like to you. What does victory mean for you, Coach Stone?
Victory for me is people finding that inner champion, finding that thing inside of them that brings them a light and a passion that they've never experienced before, and being brave enough to explore it and live it out loud. because when you do that, you're that's when you find your purpose. That's when you find your gift, your talent, the thing that you're meant to do. And if most of us can find that, then obviously we're going to make the world a better place. And so for me, victory is really ex- exploring the thing inside of you, that calling, the passion to seek out more meaning and purpose, and finding out how you can give back and serve others with that gift or that talent. So that's what victory means to me.
And what about you, Louis?
So victory for me is zero gun violence.
Mhm.
It is. Not for some, but for all.
Right.
People need to feel good about themselves again. They need to feel safe in their communities. They need to feel safe in their family so that they can fulfill their maximum potential.
Hmm.
And in doing that, nobody can defeat us. But we have too many people surviving below the level, right? We must excel again. The pursuit of excellence. We must bring that back into our vocabulary and don't let other people define excellence for us. We define it ourselves because we have a responsibility to the next generation, generation, and generation. And in our victory, the next generation will have a fighting chance to also be victorious. So that's what victory is to me,
I
right?
love that. I really love that. Danny and Louis, I can't thank you enough for making the time to come on the Victory Speak show tonight, to sharing your wisdom, to sharing your advocacy, and I'm so proud that of the two of you and the work that you're doing, the sacrifice that you're making, because many people don't know the sacrifice, the volume of the sacrifice that you're doing. Um, and you're making a difference even right now for every person that listens. I hope you were inspired by this show tonight, inspired to action, not just inspired to feel good, um, but inspired to take action. And if you know anybody who should listen to what these men spoke about tonight, please share this so that we can together make a change and make an impact. Many hands make light work, you
Mm.
know, and we need victory. We need to see, zero gun violence in our community. We need to all walk down the street unafraid. We need to be able to have our young people leave our houses and feel relatively safe that they're going to be okay and they're not going to be drafted into the next gang. We need to, as a community, start speaking out and coming out and starting those programs again. And if you're not going to get the money from wherever else, just do it. Do it in your community center, do it in your home, do it in a park. There are people right now who are going to parks and starting dance classes. You don't need a lot of money to do anything. Do it afraid, do it because you can, and if you can't do it, ask someone to join you and help you do it. And it all it takes is one drop of water, one pebble in the water, and as one person adds one, we become full, the glass becomes full, the ocean becomes full. And you see these men who have worked together, coming from corporate Canada and putting their heart and soul into this. And, never underestimate the power of one, and never underestimate when two or three are gathered together, there is power. Danny and Louis, thank you so much for coming on to the show tonight.
Well,
For
thank
those
you.
listening live and on the replay, your interaction and your questions and your comments, we value you. Um, Dr. Vibe is, Louis and Danny bringing the heart. They did. They brought the heart. I'm going to give you your flowers now, as the Americans say. Great show, outstanding. You know, Divine
Yeah.
Right is tuning in all the way from Washington D.C. This was an amazing and moving conversation. Christopher Lawrence, big up. Continue to do the great work that you do, Louis. It is needed, welcome, and appreciated. Joan Pierce, she's one of the elders in our community. And when she gives you flowers, you got the flowers. Fantastic. Wishing you the success with the movement. Thank you. And she's buying some Tim Hortons card and sending it to you too. She put
Wow.
that up earlier. Every little one of us can do something. And so if you missed any of the show, I will tell you, please go to the Victory Speaks YouTube page. and you can watch the replay. It's Victory Speaks 7. It's not hard. Victory Speaks with an S 7. You can go to Facebook and Victory Speaks 77. Share it, like it, subscribe to the channel. People, subscribe. And, have a conversation. Sometimes that conversation just starts with a smile. Tomorrow night, you are going to catch Coach Danny Stone and myself at 7 p.m. with the Dr. Vibe, and we're discussing in Clubhouse 9 ways to monetize your message right now. And we are there with the Dr. Vibe and Share Love More in the Champion U room tomorrow. So join us there. And on Wednesday, I have a new show for you. Tune in. I need you to come to my social media for a good thing, not for violence, for a good thing. We're gonna be disruptors, and I'm gonna have two amazing young women on the show. But stay tuned and follow Zero Gun Violence. Go to their website, learn about what they're doing, get involved, and remember, love is in the details. What we do for ourselves dies with us. What we do for others lives on forever. Every day, as you seek to have an inspiring conversation, do it with someone you love, someone you don't know. Make space for each other. Make space for life. Make space for love. Give hope. Remember, hope deferred makes the heart sick. So instill hope in someone today. They need it. They need you. Create a vision for your life. And as Zero Gun Violence has done, they have created that vision. And that vision is zero gun violence. This is Nicole from Victory Speaks. We got Coach Danny Stone, Louis March, and
You
we're
already
saying
know.
goodnight.
Thank
We
you,
thank
Nicole.
you. We all
We got to
appreciate
thank
you.
you too. We have to thank you so much for having us on the show. I mean, this is a very important topic, and we want to thank you because you're doing a lot of great work out here too. So, just want to acknowledge everything that you're doing as well.
Thank you, Coach
Awesome.
Stone. It's awesome.
Thanks,
So
Nicole.
you're so welcome. So everyone, we'll see you on Wednesday. Take care.